Alrighty, good evening everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here with Southern Indiana Weather. Thanks for logging on with us. Hopefully a quick forecast update for you tonight. Sponsored by Metal Magic in Washington. 698-8555 for all of your paintless dent repair needs, folks. Give Chad a call. Alright. Just to give you an idea of what we're expecting this week into the next 10 days or so, folks, it's going to be pretty quiet this week as we just sort of take a look at what the GFS model has for us. And we'll just start here. There's that rain moving out of the way. Relatively quiet weather for us this week. More of a partly sunny to mostly sunny skies, depending on what the day is. But it's going to be a much cooler week than what we have seen. Temperatures are going to average near 40 tomorrow, but beyond that, we're talking temperatures in the 30s and potentially even the 20s for a little bit beyond that. So it's certainly a much colder pattern than what we've been used to. Get that cold northwest flow in the jet stream coming down on, responsible for that. By the time next weekend comes along, though, we've got another storm system that could bring a pretty big mess to us, and the modeling, as you would expect this far out, is pretty much all over the place. So let's just quickly go through these. High pressure will be around and retreating off to our east, and that'll a system down to our south develops here on the GFS model. It takes it in as just a rain and keeps all the wintry mess to our north. But notice the position of this low pressure. It develops this low pressure over the Texas panhandle there, and then it moves it off and keeps us up into the warm quadrant of it. It moves this off up into Illinois and then up. Now, it is the only model putting it over there. It is the outlier at this point, showing you some of the others. I won't show the Euro. It's very similar to what the it's kind of a mix in between all these. But if we just take a look at the GFS's high-res counterpart, the new GFS upgrade, there's that high pressure moving off to the east. It starts out maybe as a little bit of rain and potentially some heavy rain at times, but notice the track of the low. The track of the low keeps us eventually on the cold side of it, and it changes over to a all snow type of setup. I'm not convinced that's the right particular setup either, but we'll have to see. And then you can see very cold weather follows that. The blue lines go well to our south on here. That's a huge dip in the jet stream. We get another little light disturbance that potentially moves through here next week as well and dumps a little bit of snow as well and keeps us very cold temperatures. Now let's take a look at what the GEM says. The GEM is closer to what the European model says, and this is something that I am going to watch on very closely. Here's what the GEM says. We start off early in the day on Friday, and then notice this. Notice it brings the precip shield in faster than what the other models do, and it starts us off as some light snow into a wintry mix. The purple that you see here is a sleet or freezing rain type of a setup. So right over the southern half of Indiana, you've got snow, sleet, freezing rain, and potentially transitioning to regular rain, all kind of in one wrapped up combo package. That's just nothing but a winter storm mess. And then it takes the low pressure that it develops and it tracks it sort of along the Appalachian spine here, and it keeps enough cold air in play that it keeps us into that icy and snowy mess through most of the duration of the event, and gives us a decent sized little snowfall on the back side of this system. So that's something that we're going to have to watch. The Euro is actually a sort of a blend of these. I don't have the Euro pulled up here to show you. I don't have a nice color fill map showing you the things like I do on this, but the Euro basically starts it out as an icy mess on Friday and then transitions it over into a rain. I'm not sure that it's got the right handle on anything either, and just let me briefly explain why. I think the GEM is something, GEM may be actually, the GEM here by the way is the Canadian model. The Canadian model may be latching on to something that we need to watch about. See, here's the thing. We've got cold air already locked in place. Now, normally, whenever we get some of the snows that we have seen in the past couple of weeks are potential snowstorms. Well, the problem that we've had is that we've had warm temperatures, and then it was going to be a system moving through, and the snow would be on the back side of the system. Well, the problem is here in the Ohio Valley, whenever you're depending on temperatures crashing on the backside of a system to get snow, it's a crapshoot, honestly, as to whether you get it or not. Sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. It's usually a pretty different story whenever you've already got the cold air locked in place. When you've already got the cold air locked in place and you get a warm surge of air and moisture coming in from the south, the models usually don't handle that very well at the start either. But the bias it intends to be a warm bias rather than a cold bias, whereas sometimes Sometimes on a system where you're getting cold air on the backside of a system and snow, the models will start to see the changeover happen a little too fast, and it'll be a little bit too much of a cold bias. Oftentimes, whenever you're dealing with these type of a setups where the cold air is already locked into place and you get a warm surge going in, you end up with a warm bias in the model, and it warms the atmosphere at the surface up way too quick. See, what happens is cold air is much more dense than warm air. So when you get a warm surge come in, essentially what happens is it rides up and over that cold air mass, and so it keeps cold air in place at the surface initially, and it starts to warm up a little bit in the mid layers of the atmosphere, enough that maybe it changes it to a rain type of a setup, and then the rain starts to fall, but it's still frozen at the surface, so you can get an icy mess out of that. Either it starts to freeze through the atmosphere before it hits the ground and you get sleet, or it stays rain all the way until it hits the ground where it's sub-freezing and you get freezing rain. So that's certainly a possibility. And then if the warm air is thick enough, it can eventually warm up the entire column, and we transition into all rain. But usually we get some sort of a wintry mess at the start in that kind of a setup where the cold air is already in place. Now, the European model and the Canadian model are all both showing that. GFS is way off in left field, taking the low completely on a different track, and the 13-kilometer GFS is kind of a mix in between the two. So it's something that we're going to have to watch closely over this weekend. I'm not ready to say that it's one precipitate type over another right now. What I'm ready to say is there's a potential for a wintry mess this weekend, and we will just sort of leave it at that. We'll just keep it tuned here to southern Indiana weather as we go throughout this week, folks. I'll be giving you plenty more updates. Temperature-wise, it's going to be a wild one up and down. Here's what the GFS ensemble say. I'm not sure that I buy this 50 and upper 40s for the weekend. Again, the modeling oftentimes has too much of a warm bias when you've already got cold air locked in place. I'm just not sure that we end up with it, and so I've not forecasted temperatures this high at all. Regardless, though, as we take a look a little bit later in the modeling, let's go to this real quick first. I want to show you this. This is what the GFS upgrade, the high resolution GFS, is saying, and it is not showing as extensive of a warm push for the weekend. Here, let's take a look at the third of which would be Saturday, and you see it only warms us up to the low 40s, but then by the time Sunday comes, take a look at these crashing temperatures. In fact, it's got single digits in play to start with us early next week. That's something that you don't see here in the GFS ensemble. So again, the modeling is kind of all over the place on this. That's what I'm saying, folks. They're just not handling this pattern real well, but that cold air, it's coming, and with it already being locked in place and you've got a cold push, the setup is right to end up with something sort of big. Beyond this system, though, here's what the cold air looms behind it, and I do believe that we're going to get an Arctic air invasion come down at some point in time. The GFS run here today is saying about January the 7th or so. This, by the way, is bitterly cold temperatures. This would be temperatures about 32 to 34 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. That would equate to this for morning lows, temperatures below zero on January the 7th, potentially, if this particular run with the GFS is right. Now, it is the only one saying below zero on this particular day at this point. The Canadian model hints going back and forth on some below zero temperatures, but something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. I've not went in my forecast on my 10-day this cold just yet, because the Canadian hasn't caught it on to being at this extreme yet. It keeps going back and forth and wavering, but the European model and the GF is not saying it yet. So, folks, I've went with the teens. I think I just sort of moderated it a little bit. Really, that far out, you can only give your best educated guess, and we'll have to trend that and see whether this holds. But regardless, I do think that cold air is going to come at some point in time in the near future, and really any snow cover we get is only going to enhance that. If we get a decent snowpack, that's certainly something that could be in play. The high-res GFS, remember the high-res GFS over here was wanting to show some, let me back this up in time, and you can see that high-res GFS wanted to show some pretty decent snow accumulations potentially, excuse me, potentially in the area for Sunday. And if that's the case, here's what it puts down, this little swath of snow. A good 2, 3, maybe even 4, 5 plus inches around the area. If that's the case, the Canadian model, even more extreme with its solution of several inches down here in the area with its potential snowstorm for the weekend. So if that were to verify, I am not saying that that's going to verify yet. I'm saying some of the models show it. But if that verifies, folks, easily below zero temperatures could be possible, or at least single digits. Cold, cold, very cold weather could be coming with that. We don't get that much of a snowpack. The chances of us getting to that below zero temperatures, well, honestly, they're just not as good, and I certainly could see teens being more of the norm in that type of a setup. Either way, it's going to be cold, but we've got a lot of fine tuning, and I really think this system and how it behaves this weekend is going to help set up what our pattern could be. If we get a decent snowpack on the ground, that could lead to some more cold and snow events later on down the line. The bottom line, cold snow breeds snow. Whenever you've got a good snowpack on the ground, it helps keep the temperatures down, and you could potentially get more. So something we'll keep an eye on, folks. It's not set in stone by any means. We'll take a look at your 10-day forecast here. Go to southernindianaweather.com. Not a bad day tomorrow, up to about 40, but then bottom falls out of the thermometer compared to the 50s and upper 40s that we've been seeing, really. I mean, we're talking upper 20s by the time New Year's Eve comes around. New Year's Day not looking too bad with mid 30s. Then that mess comes in for the weekend. And right now, the way I'm wording it, folks, is just cloudy and cold with a wintry mix of rain, sleet, freezing rain, and snow showers all possible. I can't tell you with any degree of certainty what the precipitation type's going to be. You compare my forecast to the National Weather Service, or the Weather Channel, or AccuWeather, or some of the other big providers, or some of the other local providers you trust, folks, our forecasts may end up being way off from each other, because right now this next weekend's up in the air. So this is sort of a compromise to the best that I can come up with. Those details are going to need to be fine-tuned as we go throughout the day. Again, the potential there maybe for Sunday to change over to some light snow showers, maybe even put down some accumulations. We'll just have to see. And then, of course, the really cold air starts to come in after that, and you can see temperatures hang out in the 20s for a while, really with just some temperatures in the low to mid-teens for your overnight lows. It's going to be cold coming up, folks. That's the bottom line. Cold, cold, cold. Will we get any snow with it? We'll just have to see what this weekend's system does, but with the way the modeling has handled things, nothing is a guarantee right now, folks. All we can do is take it one day at a time. But snow lovers, keep your fingers crossed and hold your breath and wish upon a star. At least there's something to track in the forecast. Bottom line, though, we got a few days before we get there, though, so lots can change. All right, that is it for this video update, folks. I'm meteorologist Michael Wilhite for Southern Indiana Weather. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.